Welcome, everybody, to the Indie Game Lunch Hour. Today we're talking with Taylor Gandy, a 3D generalist and freelance artist currently working at Artix Entertainment, about pursuing art's passion despite adversity and burnout in the game industry.
The Indie Game Lunch Hour.
Thank you, Mike, for dancing with me in the comments. In our live magical podcast, we give newbies in the game industry the chance to hear stories of breaking in from industry experts, as well as directly ask them questions about their areas of expertise in the second half of each episode. This is a mostly unedited recording of a weekly event we host here in our Discord on Wednesdays at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. We encourage you to swing by for the next one and ask your own questions live. There are links to join down below. I'm your host, Willem Delventhal, the headmaster of the Indie Game Academy and the Wizard of Joy, and joining me today is Taylor Gandy. Taylor works as a freelance 3D generalist making beautiful art in the game industry, and currently she is working at Artix Entertainment. Taylor, welcome to the lunch hour. So happy to have you. What are you having for lunch today?
Oh gosh, what am I having for lunch today? Water. No, I'm kidding. I'm just kidding. Water. Drink plenty of water. That's my first piece of advice. No, it's really good to be here. Yes, thank you for having me again. One of my favorite things to do is always get connected with those looking to bust into the industry and just kind of give a little bit of tips and tricks of things that I learned throughout my travels, which hasn't been long just yet. It's only been about 2.5 years or something like that. But like any bit of advice that I got when I was younger helped me out like in magnitude. So I'm paying it forward, paying it back.
Awesome. I love that. Let's all learn from Taylor. Second lesson. First lesson, drink water. Second lesson, pay it forward and pay it back as much as you can. The way that we make this a more inclusive, friendly, and kind industry, as we're all aiming for, is we reach back as much as we can and pull others up with us. So, Taylor, I love the fact that you are talking about only having 2.5 years of experience, because that gives me the chance to talk about how all of you know a lot more than you think.
Yes.
One of the reasons IGA ever got started is because I ran into a guy in Texas who had no connection to the game industry at all, didn't know where to start, didn't know who to talk to, happened to talk to me. I had a couple of years of experience at that point, I think 5 or 6, but still felt pretty young in my career ultimately. To him, I was this untouchable knowledge source. I didn't really realize how much I really knew until somebody with no knowledge approached me. So all of you, truly, even if you haven't worked professionally in games yet, I guarantee know things that others could use, and I encourage you to teach others as much as you can. Now, Taylor, one of the first questions we always ask on this show is for your origin story. So I would love to hear how you got started in games and how you got to where you are now.
Oh my gosh, that's a fun one, isn't it? So, well, I guess it kind of starts off when I was a kid. I kind of just picked up a pencil and I proceeded to never put it down. A lot of my teachers, I'm sure if you could talk to them, they would be like, "Oh, that girl, she only just drew the whole time in class, didn't learn anything." I was listening, I was just drawing. And I knew from like a very young age that I wanted to kind of pursue the arts. My dad was also an artist, but he was like a little bit more in like the painterly side of things. He did like a lot of advertisements for like Norman Rockwell and stuff like that. And I was just like, wow, I want to be just like my dad. I want to do something art related. But I didn't quite know what that meant for me at the time, because again, when you're 6, what's a cool job? Veterinarian, paleontologist,
astronaut.
Yeah, exactly. So
archaeologist.
Archaeologist, yes. So I kind of grew up and then started discovering video games, playing them. I think my first one was Spyro the Dragon. That one's just like embedded in my brain now. It lives there rent free in my mind all the time, 24/7, 365. That's what it is. So it didn't really kind of click and connect for me until like around maybe 2010, which I was like 16 at the time, and I was playing Gears of War 2. And that was like maybe one of the first games that I really sat down and had like an experience with that was like so profound and so strong that I was like, whoa, this was amazing. How can I just do something like this? And that's when I started falling into like the more 3D side of things and learning about like the pipeline, what everything is, where it needs to like fall into in order to make something like this. And I would say that that was like my very, very first inspirational moment when the credits rolled and I saw all these names and I was like, wait a minute, this is a job, people work, people do these things. Like, okay, okay, okay. So I started putting some, uh, kind of a thought into where I wanted to maybe go for like educational purposes and stuff like that. And it was like, well, if you want to go to art, you got to go to art school. And that was, the 2010 thinking, that maybe things have changed now in the bright old age of 2023, almost 2024. But back in the day, it was go to college. So I applied for colleges and things like that. But part of my tragic backstory is I grew up like kind of a little impoverished. I say kind of a little, but it was just like, my parents were great. They provided for me with what they could, but they couldn't provide like art school money because that's
Yes.
like big, 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 big dollars. And I really just wanted to do it. And I remember they sat me down and they were like, we kind of can't, I mean, not kind of can't, we can't afford this. The tuition that they were expecting me to pay at the college that I had applied to at the time was around like, I think $53,000 a year. And that was for like in-state, with scholarships. And I was like, what's $53,000 for the next 4 years of my life? That would only
I
be
don't yet
like,
have a concept of money.
yeah,
There's no way I could make a
what's
poor
what's
decision about this.
that sounds like a tiny amount, right? When you're that age, but uh, long story short, couldn't make it because, of course, I don't have like credit at the ripe old age of 18 as graduating, and I didn't have like the best grades in the world because I wasn't the best student because I was always like not paying attention in
Still
drawing.
holding that pencil the whole time.
Yeah, and I was like, yeah, this will just get me in. As it turns out, they still like to look at your GPA to make sure that you're a good student before they start giving you scholarships. So I was like, darn it. That was like probably my real first hurdle that I hit, my first wall where it was like, the game industry animation seems really hard to break into if you don't or didn't have like a educational background at that time. So it was just like, I need to do this. This is something that I want to do. So I kind of gave myself a year, turned 19, and then I was like, I need to figure out the steps that I need to take in order to get where I need to go. So a lot of it was just kind of self exploration, self teaching myself how to work with the 3D pipeline, and things like that. And it took around like 7 years for me to build the credit necessary to take out private loans. Nightmare, by the way. Don't do that if you can't. And so I ended up like going to get my AA even to make art school cheaper, just so I can, try and afford it. I shopped myself around. I was like, oh, school here, school there. I finally found one that gave me a really decent scholarship called Columbus College of Art and Design out in Columbus, Ohio. Really tiny school, but everyone was super friendly and super lovely. I'm super glad that I was able to attend there because, like, low key, that was one of the, I guess, integral parts of like why I have a job now. So that's like really great. So our art school paid off for me, but like, I got some opinions about that. But it was essentially just like a lot of work and like a lot of heartbreak and a lot of hurdles of going like, am I going to be able to do this? Is this something that I can afford? Because one of the things that they don't tell you or like to talk about when it comes to the arts and things like that is it does come from money. There isn't like a lot of help and mobility for people who come from like impoverished backgrounds to like kind of get up into that space because just how expensive it is. I mean, I even had really good scholarships to go to this school, and I still walked out with full transparency. I'm not afraid to like talk about numbers or anything, but I walked out with around like $85,000 in student loan debt, which is way better. Okay.
Than some
Than
people.
160. Yeah. So it's like way better. Yeah, big oof. I could see that in the comments right now. Yeah, I mean, it's like it's something that you have to like look at and understand. Um, if you are intending on attending an art school And scholarships is, there are scholarships. Some people I do know got really, really, really good scholarships where they got in on a full ride or something like that. But those are too far and in between all of those things. So it's just prepare yourself. It is a lot of money to go do these things. But I think the reason why it was helpful for me, and I'm looping this back around, I promise, but it was helpful for me because I had like a background fundamental knowledge of like what 3D was. So I wasn't really spending a lot of time learning in college, which sounds really funny because like that's what you're there to do, right? It's a educational institution. I'm getting educated. But it was more so me executing on like a higher level the knowledge that I already had taught myself before I even had gone to college, and gained like I guess some like world knowledge about like just life in general. I don't think truly that I would have been maybe as successful in college if I had gone when I was right at 18, because there was like a lot of soul searching I had to do for myself before I was ready to commit to something that was going to cost me $85,000. But like it was definitely very important to me. I think that I went. So what I decided to do instead of like doubling down, and of course, like I learned a lot of things, I did a lot of things. But what I really, really wanted to do when I was in school was network with people. I just wanted to network. And having the educational badge was a little bit easier to just kind of like find people on LinkedIn, which we're going to talk about later. I love LinkedIn.
Me too. A plus.
It's so good. It's so good. But LinkedIn, like, it's a little bit easier to talk to people like, hey, I'm a student from so and so such and such, and I'm really interested in what you do as a position. Would you mind talking to me and stuff like that? So it was just like a lot of networking for myself with my professors. Like, it doesn't have to be limited to like outside. It can also be inside because like when it comes to art school, I would treat it as like a soft interview. You really don't know what's going to come about your education, and what ended up happening was one of my professors was impressed with what I had done with my time at the school and essentially offered me a job right out of college. So that was like crazy. And I was like, whoa,
Pretty
really? Really
nice.
me?
Good
Yeah,
deal.
pretty nice, pretty cool, pretty good, great deal. So that was a virtual production job. I was working with Dancing with the Stars, and I ended up flying out to set. Here's me just freshly graduated, and they're like, "Here's your job.
Wait,
Make
that is
this,
so
do this."
cool.
Yeah, and then they were like, "Oh, by the way, we want you to fly out to LA to be on set and make sure that everything, because we use Unreal Engine to drive the volume, the virtual production wall." And they essentially were like, "Hey, do you want to go to LA and be on set and make sure everything's okay?" And I'm like, huh? What do you mean? I've never like left the Eastern Seaboard and you want me to go all the way over there? And they were like, yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, the guy who offered me the position, Steve, such I love him. He's so lovely, such a good guy. Steve Hubbard, everyone. Magical individual. I don't know if anyone else knows him here, but he is just like full of knowledge about many different things. And he was like, look, just do it. Just do it. This is what you want to do, right? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, just get on the plane. Just go. Go be there. So it ended up being really, really, really successful. And it was a wild time just to be on set and see all these things and having like literally zero knowledge about anything, and then having very much knowledge be like implanted into my brain, like, oh,
Yeah,
this
I'm
is
sure
how
you
this
left
works,
with some
really.
knowledge.
Yeah, I left with a little too much knowledge. I like passed out on the plane from like exhaustion because like it was like 8 a.m. The final shoot day when we shot everything. It was 8 a.m. until 2 a.m. is like when we stopped. So and then I had to get in a car and go. Um, but like so that kind of like led into a couple more opportunities for me, and then it ended up being that I was talking with the CEO of Artix Entertainment, Adam. We were friends a little bit before I actually started doing this, and then he was like, "Oh, well, we could use a little bit more help here in this pipeline for Adventure Quest 3D. Would you be interested in helping out with the art pipeline?" And I was like, "Sure, you know what? Why not? I'm an independent contractor. I'd love to help out." And now here I am. So I went from they always said, this is kind of funny, that you're one of these days you're going to have to choose between film and games. And I was like, I don't know if I want to. So I went into virtual production, which is kind of like a fusion of both. So now I get to enjoy a little bit of both. So like since then I've worked on like feature films, I've done virtual production, and now I'm working in indie dev with Artix Entertainment. So it's been a ride for me. It's like a lot of ups and downs, but I think it was one of those things that paid off, and I truly believe that opportunity came about because of art school. But again, like art school is one of those things, like it is what you truly make of it. So
Yeah.
That is, I guess, like how I ended up here.
That's the origin story. I mean, that's awesome.
Yeah.
There's a lot. There's a lot that we could potentially pick apart and start talking about there. I think a couple of my favorite call outs are number one, this is maybe something for us to talk about. I feel like we could spend a whole episode talking about whether or not formal education is actually worth it at this point in time. For the first time in my life, maybe a year or two ago, somebody asked if they should go to school, and I didn't just say yes. I was not as confident about saying yes anymore, almost entirely due to the ridiculous level that student loans have gotten to. There's also a lot of what you talk about that is like sort of going with the flow, almost like you definitely had direction and you were steering in some ways, but I imagine it almost like a leaf on a river. Like you're kind of steering, but ultimately you're allowing the world to bring you places, like heading out to LA. And then I think maybe one of my favorite call outs is when you are presented with a little off channel in that river, like take it. You could have decided that it was too overwhelming to jump on a project, or you could have argued that you didn't have enough knowledge to fix the screen if it broke, or like, whatever else. You could have let your fear stop you, or you could have decided perhaps your financial situation or something was too great, but instead you took the opportunity when it was presented to you. And you made opportunities as much as you could. You were connecting with these professors, you were showcasing your talents. And you were asking around. Now getting into Artix is largely a result of basically just good old networking and meeting people and showcasing that you're awesome and why you're awesome. So I want to commend you. This is a very cool story. I also didn't know about the virtual production before we got on this call. So I'm like low-key really excited about that. That's really cool.
Yeah, virtual production. With all the strikes that happened and the layoffs, and things are a little bit more expensive to borrow. I haven't had many of those opportunities hit my desk, but at one point, I was working for Amazon, and they were about to, because they heard that I was just flying out fresh out of school to LA to be on the set, and I had an opportunity with Amazon to fly out to the UK, but my visa fell through because usually they reserve those for people in leadership positions and things like that. They said I didn't have enough experience.
Oh,
so I was like, oh.
that must have been a bad day.
Yeah, I mean, but they still kept me on for 7 months and stuff like that, which was like the full duration of the contract. And it was really cool to work on. I have no idea what ended up happening to that show that I was on. I think it was in post, and I think they put a pause on it. So hopefully it ends up making it out there.
Happens to a lot of us in games. Well, I want to make sure. So I think there's a lot we could pull out and start talking about, but I want to make sure that we talk about the topic that you gave us, which is pursuing art's passion despite adversity and burnout realities. I think there's a lot that title implies.
It's like a mouthful.
Yeah, it's a mouthful, but it's real. Art in general, and when I say art, by the way, I have a very loose definition of what art is, and in my opinion, that is the truth. Art is basically just self-expression, and there's about 1,000,001 ways that you can self-express. But I think it's real when somebody identifies as an artist, whatever their art might be. Oftentimes, that comes with this expectation that they're going to sacrifice for their art. Largely financially, but in other ways too, like burning out because, well, don't you enjoy doing this? So I would love to hear, your introduction. What is your 101 for all of us who are artists and feeling kind of burnt out? How do we deal with it? How do we exist in this reality?
Oh gosh. So that's the question, isn't it? And truly, like, it's one of those ones where I don't have all of the answers too, but it's one of the ones where, I think I can at least do my due diligence in preparing you for what this is. if this is like your chosen industry. So I like to call out this little comment that Rick made here, where the industry moves too fast, formal education moves too slow to keep up. And I agree, because it happened with my dad. He was a painter in the world of Photoshop, where it just kind of entered into the industry. So, before Photoshop, everything was hand painted, like advertisements, billboards, movie posters, painted. Photoshop entered the scene. And my dad essentially lost his career in art because he couldn't keep up, but that was the stuff that he learned in college. So keep learning. You have to keep learning. The buck does not stop with your formal education. Keep learning. So like saying that, I just wanted to call that out, because that was like, okay. So like I was like going back to the question, which was like, how do you deal with burnout? So one of the things that I don't think that they talk enough about in art school, okay, is like, one of these days you're going to graduate, right? And art school is such a lovely time, if you make it a lovely time for yourself, right? So like it is freeing. It is one of those experiences where you have complete control over everything that you're doing, as far as like what your projects are going to look like, what you want to do, because you don't have a lot of those opportunities when you're entering the industry. Most of the time it's creating things that other people want you to create. So like, for example, huge fan of Dinosaurs and Dragons here. And I if I had an opportunity to do, if I had an opportunity to work on something with dragons and dinosaurs, like for the rest of my life, like I'd be like a happy little clam. But there's not a lot of those opportunities, and there's a lot of times where I have to work on things that I necessarily don't enjoy or want to work on. So it kind of like makes it a little hard for you to find the motivation to keep going, right? So one of the things that they don't talk about is at the end of the day, art as a career is a job. It is a job. It's a fun job. It is a great job. And I am so, so happy that I'm able to do the things that I am able to do. But at the end of the day, it is a job. It is 40 hours a week that you have to commit to doing this stuff. And I think like if you're looking into like maybe going to an art school and paying that price tag, or even just taking private classes or mentorships, really look at yourself. Look at yourself and ask yourself, can I do this for 40 hours a week, 5 days a week, for, an entire year? Because again, like here in America, we don't have like a lot of paid time off that is given, through the company. You have usually about a week of it. So there's not a lot of time to kind of like rest between what you're doing. So you just kind of have to keep going. So one of the things that like you just truly, truly have to be honest with is like, is this something that I'm capable of doing? Is this something that is going to be good for me? Is this going to burn me out? Because it is, and this is going to sound contradictory, it is not worth it to torment yourself if it's something that you're struggling with, like as far as like the motivation goes, or like I can't keep up, it feels too fast, it's just it's overwhelming. Like take a step back, look at what you've got, your talents, your skills, what you enjoy about it. Why do you enjoy it? Really look at that. Because sometimes it can feel, because art is personal. Sometimes you get like a critique or something just hits a little different, and it just doesn't, it hurts a little bit, and then it just kind of like starts getting into your head, and you're like, oh man, can I really do this, and stuff like that. And it's just it starts to burn you out, it starts to wear you out. You have to kind of keep close to you what it is that inspired you to do this in the first place. And also don't like stress yourself out or burn yourself out by like looking at everyone around you and seeing like, oh my gosh, they're constantly making personal work and doing like sketchbooks and all of these things, all of this stuff. And I can't, like, I just don't have the energy to. There's just so much going on in my life. At some points, because as an independent contractor, I've retained sometimes 2 or 3 clients at a time. So it's just me working almost on a near constant basis so I can, pay my bills and pay off my student debt. So it's just like, I did that to myself because I went to school. But at the end of the day, like the bills don't stop because you're tired and you just need a break from it. You have to find the will to keep going. So like,
Yeah.
if you can't and you're burnt out, like try to repair that burnout before you go into it a little bit more professionally, because you will run into a wall where it's just like, I can't do it. I just need to lay down for an extended period of time. So it's just like, um, what I like to do is, or what I always told my students, because I taught on a collegiate level at some point, and a lot of them would struggle with like anxieties and burnout, from just having to constantly keep going, be creative, drain those brain juices. You have to keep going. And it's, I would say, like, find a hobby that isn't art. Find a hobby that isn't art. Which might sound weird, because like you should always be like going, refining your skills, learning, teaching yourself new things. Yes, okay, but that's like professional development at this point, since you are a professional. Um, Having hobbies that aren't art kind of takes the pressure off, and it kind of like lets you have a little bit more fun with life. So for me, it's like
Yeah.
language learning, or crocheting. Love crocheting, or even just playing video games. Like
Warhammer
sometimes the best.
40K.
Oh yeah, World of Warcraft is my current deep dive, because I only have really
Everybody's
time
like
for
getting
like,
back into that right now. It's sort of interesting.
oh,
Seems like this big trend.
they kind of revived it. They kind of revived
Yeah,
it. So like
they did.
they did. It was really good. It's really good right now. So good space. But just kind of like find hobbies. Find hobbies
Yeah.
for yourself that aren't like based in art, to
Yeah.
kind of rejuvenate those juices, so you're not constantly spending the juice,
Hmm.
because you need that for work.
Yeah.
So and they don't warn you about that, because like of course, like when you go to art school, you're paying like 35 to $55,000 a year, and they want you to keep going to finish your degree, of course. um so they're not going to be like, oh, by the way, on the other side of this rainbow, it could be really tough for you. It could be something that's really hard for you to deal with mentally.
Yeah.
Because that kind of like would maybe shut some people down, and maybe they wouldn't want to pursue it as much. But I think like it just needs to be mentioned. Like art is, it's put up like on a pedestal, like, oh,
Mm.
it's art. Like, it's a fun job. It's like, but it is a job.
It's a
I
job.
mean, you still, yeah, it's a job. You have to show up every day, and you have to do your best every day. Because
Mhm.
at the end of the day, your name is on everything that you make. And the industry is really small. I think maybe 2 or so weeks ago, you had a gentleman named Bernard who was working with Epic Duel. And I was like, Epic Duel, I know Epic Duel. Artist Entertainment works with Epic Duel. Wow, small world, small world. So like, everything is so small. You really want to put your best out there. So just kind of like pay attention to like your needs as an individual, and don't put too much pressure on like trying to be the guy who's like, ah, let me paint this plein air image in a Starbucks, and here's this that I worked on today between everything else that I have to do. Focus on work. Focus on yourself and work. Treat yourself. Be nice. And then everything else can come second to that. So just kind of remembering you are human. Be
That's
human.
awesome. This
Hmm.
is once again, like I feel like there's a lot of really good call outs. I love to repeat some of my favorite lessons when I talk to people on this show, because it helps me remember, but then also it helps listeners remember. And I think there's a lot of good that you just said. I think number one, just when you are doing school, and really this is for any educational setting, if you're doing a boot camp, or if you're doing actual formal education, or if you're just doing like some kind of weekend class or a Udemy course or something, make that as valuable of a time as you can, because it is easy to coast. It's easy to just kind of like, I'm here, right? That's all I need to do. But
Hmm.
ultimately, you're going to get so much more out of basically anything if you really put effort into getting something out of it, connecting with people, finding the opportunities, and taking advantage of them when they do present themselves. I think one of my favorite lessons from what you just said is that everything is a job. It's always going to be a job, no matter what you do. I recently, or semi recently anyway, transitioned into game design from engineering. And in engineering for a long time, I was like, this is not for me. I know that
Hmm.
it isn't. And I sort of doubt myself somehow from knowing that it isn't. But ultimately, eventually, I transitioned into game design. So much happier here. Still a job. Whew.
Good job.
Still sometimes,
Definitely a job.
still sometimes a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
You also, told everybody to ask yourself this simple question, which is, can I do this for 40 hours a week, every week, forever?
Hmm.
There's an old concept called ikigai, which we bring up every now and again. We had a wonderful talk with Tony Sharma of Wizards of the Coast about the concept of an ikigai, which is a Japanese term for your reason for being. And it's a four-circle Venn diagram where the center is your reason for being, and the four circles are what the world needs, what you do well, what you enjoy, and what you can be paid for. And I think that's what you're aiming for. That nice little center spot. You can make some money. It's good for the planet. It's okay for you. You can stand at 40 hours a week.
Yes.
And
Well,
ultimately,
that's all that matters.
that's all that matters. I also think just to throw it out there, remember that comparison is the thief of joy. You're not going to do anything as perfectly as somebody else. So if you sit there and
Oh,
stare at somebody
absolutely.
else, yeah, you're just going to make yourself miserable. I think we've talked about a lot of really good stuff. I want to make sure we have some time for community questions. So I'm going to
Hmm.
jump straight into that. I'm going to invite Rick up onto the stage. Rick has three questions for you. Rick, I'd like you to pick one of them to start with, and then we're going to have Mike go after you.
All right, yeah. Um, I've been loving this talk. I love what your like your story and where you've come from. So I have a question about what's the best way to balance your skill development with the tasks required of your paid work?
Oh gosh. So I like to look at kind of building my skills while I'm working at the same time. So everything that I'm doing and producing for my job, I'm trying to learn something new, trying to push it that much further, even though I wasn't maybe asked to do that. So it kind of falls back onto a chunk of advice that I got from a gentleman named Joey Beckley, who works, I believe, at Leica right now. And one of the pieces of advice that he gave to us when I was, back in my educational days was treat your C's like or treat your A's like your C's, and then push it that much further. Because ultimately, like, there is not enough time in a day for you to kind of like professionally develop some things and also teach yourself some things at the same time without like running into an issue of like suddenly you're spending 16 hours a day in front of your computers. Your eyeballs are blurry, you haven't showered in 5 days, the whole nine yards. Like, so I would say like it's one of those things where you should try to wrap as much learning into what you're currently doing for your paid work if you can. Okay. If you can't, carve out some time for yourself, and treat it as like you developing yourself for the future. So let's say you're in an industry or you're in an adjacent industry and you just kind of want to like get your foot in the door, but you really need to work on something. Um, Carve out a time, even if it's just like an hour or two a day, 30 minutes even. Like if you can't even give yourself an hour, give yourself 30 minutes, because I'm sure you'll find at least another 30 minutes in there once you get started, because 30 minutes is not enough and you'll always just kind of push it that much further. So just kind of like don't burn yourself out and don't put too much pressure on the things that you're making while you're developing your skills, because ultimately like you'll feel that pressure and you'll almost have like a worse product coming out. Just remember to have fun with it, but also just be very careful with how you divide your time. But if you can wrap your learning into what you're doing as a career, I would encourage that. I mean, it's like a twofer right there.
Do you think that it would be good to have an idea of what you are trying to learn, and you can maybe help that guide your discussions with your clients? So if you're talking about something, you already know what you want to learn proactively, and you say, "Oh, well, why don't I try this?" And you can kind of guide the task request through that.
So
Is that okay?
it kind of would depend, right? So like I maybe wouldn't go to someone who is like, "Hey, can you illustrate like this children's book?" Or, "Hey, can you give me this spreadsheet?" And be like, "Actually, we could do this in 3D and it would be like so much more cool if we just did it in 3D." Because ultimately you want to respect like your clients' like wishes and work, and what you're doing with that. But like what I'm saying is like if you want to learn like a technique about, like UVs or a different way of setting up like a material or working with a material in a different way, um, if you have the time, push it in that direction as long as you're accomplishing everything that you need for your client, because ultimately what your client wants comes first. Learning should come second, right? But if you can wrap the learning in there, that's where I would, absolutely just do it. Just do it, especially if it accomplishes what the client wants. do it. Learn some things.
Just do it is a great motto. I can't think of any company that's ever had a motto quite like that before.
Just do it.
But just do it. Truly, though, like we get the joke all the time that our advice to every question is just make games, but it's true. Like, just try, just give it a shot.
Just do it. Yeah.
I have always found that project-based learning, at least for me and for a lot of the students I work with, is more valuable than reading about it or fantasizing about it or whatever. Just
yeah. I mean, all you could theorize about things until the sun goes down, but ultimately, it's like, I want to build a project with snow in there. What am I going to learn? I'm going to learn how to do like a volumetric body. So when footprints hit the snow, it looks like snow. So that's the learning moment. And then the rest of the project is built up around it,
Yeah. I think those little like exploratory curiosity moments are where a lot of the learning comes from. Like, could I do volumetric snow? Let me research that. And eventually it'll take you somewhere. All right. Mike is the next question. Mike, you want to ask yours?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hey, Taylor. I was just wondering, so I work primarily with kind of contracting, and as somebody who is potentially working for a company and wants to explore and begin their journey with client work, do you have any good advice for somebody and maybe some tips as far as how they can go about that?
Ooh, okay. So that one's also a really good question because contract work and freelance work is kind of king in this industry a little bit. So more often than not, you'll find yourself a 1099 contractor for most things that you work on with contracts ranging anywhere between like just a couple of months to maybe a year or two. It's very common. But don't be scared of that because, like, once you start getting a couple of jobs, it almost kind of feels that you have to break in maybe like 2 or 3 times over and over and over again when you first start out and you don't have like a big network for yourself. But once you start getting jobs and you start networking with people that you're working with and stuff like that, you'll find that it's a little bit easier to net more contract work. But as far as going for like W-2 paid positions where you get the benefits and stuff, those positions do exist. You just have to really try and look for them. But like, again, like contract work, it is the nature of the beast. It is the nature of the beast, unfortunately. Like, it's something that, like, I would love a W-2 position. I actually, in my 2.5 years of working in the industry, I have not had a W-2 position. I've been strictly a freelance artist, and it's not been bad. Like, I've actually made probably more money than I've ever had in my entire life doing it. But it is kind of like a little disheartening when it's like, oh, I need health insurance and you don't have like protections of paid time off. And what do you mean Uncle Sam's going to want 30% of my money at the end of the year? Withhold your taxes. So it's one of those things where you just kind of have to keep pushing at it. And I would say, like, with freelance opportunities, there's always opportunities to potentially turn that into a W-2 employment. So, like, being on top of your stuff, always use your ABCs, always be in contact, right? Always be in contact with your clients. Just be sure that you're doing all the right things, stand out above and beyond. And sometimes that might turn into a W-2 position. I know a couple of people in my own professional network where they started off at a company as a 1099 contractor. And because of all the hard work and time that they put in with a company, they actually moved them into a W-2 position. So it's not unheard of. It's just you're going to run into you're going to run into contract work a lot more than you will W-2 positions. So, like, it's like one of those things you just have to navigate, I guess.
Awesome.
Sorry, just real quick, as far as people who are exploring and they're not necessarily comfortable or know how to sell themselves as like an independent contractor, do you have any quick tips on how you can promote yourselves as an independent contractor when you're first starting?
Oh gosh, yes. So that's also a good one. Networking, again, make sure you're talking to everyone and anyone. If you can attend events and you're comfortable attending events, attend them. I actually went to Unreal Fest for the first time this year, and it was a blast. You meet people from all walks of life, and it's kind of like, I've never met so many people going, oh, who are you? What do you do? Oh, you do that? We're looking for this. Would you want to? And it's like, oh, okay, I see how this works. So really make sure that your portfolio is there. Make sure that you have everything constructed, ready to go. if a portfolio is relevant to you on the art side. If not, make sure you have your resume there. And then advertising yourself, I just kind of found that it's more beneficial for me to just kind of network and rely on word of mouth for me. So whenever I go, I'm open for work, sometimes I'll receive like 2 or 3 LinkedIn messages. Hey, I got something going on over here. And it's because I was just, talking with people while I was working instead of just going into my little cubby and just staying there for 40 hours a week and not leaving. So like, talk to people. Talk to people, and get comfortable with looking at yourself kind of like a business, because that's what you are. At the end of the day, you have to be comfortable with advertising yourself and your work, but let your work speak for yourself. If your work is really, really good, people will notice. So
Yeah.
Just be good, be kind to people, make great things.
Excellent pieces of advice.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Mike.
Mhm.
I think I might hear in the background. Wow, it's time for the question of the day, where we reiterate one of the most important points we learned from our guest of honor, Taylor. So, first person to type in the chat the answer to this question gets a couple House Cup points. If you are listening, speak it out loud for us. Help the lessons sink in further. Colleen says, my ears will work on turning down the volume. So, the question is, what is the one question Taylor wants you to ask yourself before committing to a career path? What is the one question Taylor wants you to ask yourself before committing to a career path? Examine why you enjoy it. Rick says, can I do it for 40 hours a week? Rick, you are correct. 40 hours a week, 52 weeks a year, or like maybe 50.
Yeah, 50. You get Christmas and all that.
Yeah, a little bit less, maybe 48 even. Rick,
Yeah.
let us know where you'd like to give your 3 House Cup points to. We've got time probably for 2 more questions. Rick, actually, I would like you to ask another one of your questions now, and then we're going to call up Colleen for the last question of the day. Rick, are you there? You can unmute and ask one of your other questions.
Yeah. Okay, so what measures do you take to maximize your energy levels as you're going through that fluctuation of burnout and high energy?
Oh my gosh. So self-care, like just being kind to yourself. When I am facing burnout, a lot of the times what ends up happening to me is it manifests itself in, oh God, what's that word for that? Oh man, I feel like such a dingus for not remembering what it is. But it's essentially like I feel like I can't do this. Like I suddenly know nothing. Everyone knows
Like
everything,
inner
and
critic.
my inner critic is just here, and he's like, "You know nothing. Absolutely zero
Jon Snow.
things. Yes, quit your job." And I'm
Imposter
like,
syndrome?
"No, yeah, imposter syndrome. That's it. That's exactly what that is." So
Mike got it.
imposter
Wasn't me.
syndrome.
Yeah.
Yes, thanks, Mike. Kicks up to like an 11, and it's like, you know nothing. Everything that you make is bad. So, what I like to try and do is I treat myself to like maybe like a really nice bath, nature walks, just like watching films that inspired me when I was like real little, like How to Train Your Dragon, any of those. Of course, dragons, you know, it's one of those things for me, but it's just like watching things that are comfortable to me that remind me, like, here's why I'm here. Here's what inspired me. And it kind of helps put that like, this is why I'm here. This is that spark that like made it so that I put myself into this level of debt to do the things that I'm doing today. Like find what it is that is comfortable to you. And just kind of like do those a little bit more. Maybe just like don't work as hard on the art stuff, like in your personal life. Work hard with your job, okay? Like don't slack on the job. But I would say like maybe just be kinder to yourself. And for my energy levels, I sleep. I like if I'm not feeling it, nap time. I'm going to bed. I'm going to bed. You will see me in 2 to 3 hours. I will wake up. I will get a coffee. I will do some nature walks. I will do literally anything else to try and like realign myself so I'm not like up in here. Because when you're existing up in here all the time, it only is like a detriment to yourself, because at the end of the day, everyone else around you is doing crazy cool stuff, and it feels like you're doing nothing really cool. But like the job that I'm working right now with Artix Entertainment, like I played those games when I was a kid. Like not a lot of people can say that they played the game and then grew up to work on the
Adventure
game. It's just
Quest.
Adventure Quest. Like it's been 3D now. You can play it on your PC on your phone. It's free.
Wow.
Please play it. But just to go back to your question, to keep your energy levels up, just like really indulging in things that make you happy. It kind of puts that drive back in your soul when everything kind of feels bleak and you have that inner critic going like, nah, you can't do anything.
So it sounds like the real actionable item there is to fully understand what it is that you can go back to as your comfort activity that you find rejuvenating.
Yeah, fine. Like whatever it is, like, and this could be different things for everyone. Like, I don't want to be like, what I say is what it has to be, because it might be different for everyone. Everyone's journeys to game dev and things like that are completely and entirely different. My story is going to not be the story of anyone else on the planet, and that's amazing. But like you just have to kind of find out what it is that you can do to decompress. Just become human. And if that is like laying on the ground for 5 hours, like lay on the ground for 5 hours, you know, just be kind to yourself. And you'll find that your energy is coming back if you're not just trying to like squeeze blood from a stone, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Squeeze
Thank
blood
you.
from a stone. Amazing. All right, let's get our last question of the day in. Colleen, would you like to unmute and ask your question?
Yeah, so I joined a little late, but I don't know if you covered this aspect, but how do you kind of start getting those contracting jobs? I was thinking about like Fiverr, Upwork, stuff like that. I haven't really looked too deep into it just because I'm kind of like, I'm on this project already, you know, I gotta do this first. But afterwards, I was thinking like, how do I continue getting hopefully like ideally paid roles so I don't have to work a part-time job I'm not super thrilled about, but if you have any tips on that.
Yeah, so that's also kind of hard, right? I mentioned this before where it feels like almost when you're first starting your career, it's going to feel like you have to like, eh, you know, break in like maybe 2 or 3 times before you have a foundational network of people that like know and love you and want to work with you again. So when you post like, "Hey, I'm open for work," and then they start flooding into your DMs like, "I got this job. Do you want to do this job?" I remember I got fired for for like 2 minutes on the Amazon gig that I was working because again, like I couldn't go over there to the UK to participate, and it was I just moved departments instead. But you know, words kind of like didn't make it to where they need to, so I got fired for a whole 2 seconds. I opened up my network, and I had no less than like 3 people coming like, "Hey, do you want to work on this?" And by that time, I actually got my job back. It's very weird. So it's just like one of those things where my biggest piece of advice to like net more contract work is to talk to more people. So this, I talked about LinkedIn again in the very early hour, I guess, that we had together, and that was my biggest resource. Like, talk to if you're in an educational setting, talk to the people around you. Your network starts there. Talk to your professors because most of the time they have industry experience and they know people. In my case, my professor was the only reason why I have a career because he was willing to take a chance on me and he was impressed with my work. I know, talking people. If you've ever played The Sims 2, the one requirement that you have to make is make friends to keep going with a job, and I hated it. I was like, I don't want to do that. I just want to work and make money. But as it turns out, it's just like real life. You have to make friends. You have to talk to people. So netting more contracts, open yourself up to LinkedIn, talk to people, even if it's people that aren't even like in your town, like just start talking to people in positions that you want to work in, but be genuine, and be kind. And one of the other things I would say is like, if you are comfortable attending events, attend them. Unreal Fest opened me up to very many individuals I otherwise wouldn't have met that are interested in my work simply because I was there. And I was like, oh my gosh, we're at Unreal Fest together. How are you? Oh, you work on this? That's really cool. I'm over here working on this. Oh, you have this? Oh, okay. So just, making yourself visible, making yourself present is going to be the way that you kind of get more of these contracts. Some people might say that you need like a huge social media presence. I'm bad at social media TM. So like I don't really have like a huge presence there, but that's been successful for other people too. So if you have like a good following, build it if you can. But if not, just just talk to people and be genuine. It might take time to really build up that network, but it is absolutely 110% worth it. And yeah.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Colleen, does
Thank
that answer
you.
your question? Nice.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, fantastic. That means we are at the end of the episode. Thank you so much, Taylor, for your time. Before we say goodbye, we like to always ask our guests for a piece of homework. So what is something that the listeners can do in the next week or so that'll help them practice some of what we talked here today?
Oh gosh. Well, if you haven't got a LinkedIn, get one. And then the second thing is talk to maybe 3 people that are working in positions that you would like to be in, and try and see if you can learn something from them, even just talking to them, and understand that these individuals are people that are busy, so they might not respond right away, but just like talking to someone and just like being there in the moment and just learning from each other, I think is going to be the homework that I'm going to assign for you. You can also start, by the way, because I know like an hour is like such a tiny amount of time, right? My LinkedIn is actually like linked on my profile. So if you just click on my thing, you can link up with me. And if you have any additional questions you want to ask, I'm always open to questions. I love answering questions. So if you're out there and you're like, man, I'm shy, I wanted to ask a question, but like I didn't know how to approach it, like feel free to message me. Let me be that first link to you, because again, like I wouldn't be where I am today if it weren't for other people like talking to me, giving me advice, and taking chances on me. So let me be that for you. Absolutely, just feel free to DM me anywhere. You can DM me here, you can DM me on LinkedIn, connect with me. I would love to hear from you.
That is awesome. Thank you for that. Thank you for that generous offer. We're going to put Taylor's LinkedIn link down below in the comments if you're listening to this after the fact, in the description, excuse me. So click that, link it to Taylor. Your homework then for the next week from the Indie Game Lunch Hour is to reach out to 3 people on LinkedIn and strike up a conversation. When you do that, go ahead and post for us, tag the Indie Game Academy so we can see you being awesome about how it went. Tell us if it went well. Tell us if it went poorly. Tell us if they totally ignored you. All of those are successful because you gave it a shot.
Exactly. And every shot you take is a shot you don't miss. So
yeah, right. Michael Scott. So
I
Taylor,
think I
before
botched
we,
one a little bit.
before we say goodbye, are there any final words you want to give us, or anything you want to plug here at the very end?
Any words, final words? Oh gosh. Sometimes it is going to absolutely feel like nothing is working and everything is bleak and you're never going to make it into this industry. A lot of the times I see people around me go, this is something that I want to do, but it wasn't working out for 2, 3, 4 years. And they just stop. If you're passionate about this and this is something that you want to do and you can do it for 40 hours a week, 5 days a week for 52 weeks a year, absolutely
48,
do
49.
yourself that 40, 48, 49. Do yourself that justice and really indulge in your creativity. And you are a creative individual. You are here for a reason. You are a passionate individual. So if you have that, don't let go of it. Because ultimately that's where it stops. If you let go of it, you let that little spark in your chest kind of like die. It's really hard to kind of make it back in there. So even if it's starting to feel really, really tough, as long as you're still surviving and you're paying your bills and you can just do whatever you need to do and you're not hurting yourself trying to do this, keep going, keep learning, keep developing. Don't just stick with what you have if you just left college, or if you just built a portfolio of 2 or 3 things. Keep adding to it. Keep going. Keep going. Do not stop, because you're probably almost there and you don't even realize it. You just have to run into the right person at the right time. And I know you guys probably hear that a lot, but it's true. You just have to talk to the right person at the right time, and you never know who that right person would be or what that time would be. So just keep going and talk to people.
Yeah,
We're all
yeah.
here for
It is a numbers game, and it only takes one person to fundamentally change your life. One person to give you that chance. So if you talk to 100 people and 99 of them don't respond to you, that's okay. It's normal. You're fine. It's okay. If that one person talks to you, that's one person that might change your life. Taylor, this has truly been an incredible episode of the show. I'm really excited to share this around and talk about some of the stuff that I learned from this talk. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for answering these questions.
Of course. Yes. Thank you again for having me.
Definitely. I love that we got to talk to 2 people from Arctics back to back. We talked to Brendan last week.
Brendan, yes, sorry.
Yep.
I think we called him Bernard.
Yes, no, it is Bernard. It is Bernard.
Oh, Bernard,
right.
Okay.
Right? I'm pretty sure.
Right?
My bad. We were not. And for everybody who was in here listening, thank you for listening. And listeners listening after the fact, thank you for listening. We ask that if you enjoyed. Oh, I already see the comment. I'm sorry. We
I
ask that
remember
you share
seeing
this
that
along.
thing. I was like, epic duel, no way. Oh my god. Oh my god.
I was so pumped to
Such
talk
a
about
small
it.
world. Such a
It
small
was another
world.
really good episode. If you haven't listened to that one, go listen to it. Go listen to it right now. We ask that you send this episode along to just one other person who may enjoy it and may learn from it. So if there's somebody trying to work in art and games in your life, send this along to them for us. All right, that's going to be it. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next week on Wednesday.
Thank you. Bye.
Goodbye.